Peace, salam, shalom. 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 One more time. Peace, salam, shalom for Palestine. Peace, salam, shalom for Israel. Peace, salam, shalom for all the world. Peace, salam, shalom. All right, welcome back, friends. We have one more session we're going to do, and I want to start this one actually just by thanking our volunteers, our cooks, everyone who helped to make today possible. Our kitchen lady, Carol, has put work into making it there, but also Patricia and Cherry and Kathy and Jim and a bunch of other folks have put in a little bit of effort to make today pleasant for all of us to be able to be here. Thank you so much. Please, let's give them a round of applause. Yeah, you wouldn't want to just come listen to me talk for 3 hours without refreshments. That'd be awful. Amen. All right. Absolutely. So the book of Joshua has a polemical bent. That's the way I would like to say it. Polemical bent. That is, it has got an argument it's trying to make. The argument it is trying to make on behalf of the house of David, most specifically Josiah in his reign, but it was used by kings that came after him, is that the house of David has a unique claim to an ability to lead Israel that will benefit Israel because they are uniquely faithful to God. They have the ability to guide you in worship in the temple in Jerusalem, which is the only place you should worship Yahweh. And in so doing, you can, by being faithful, be promised prosperity in the land and protection from Israel's many enemies that are out there. And if you fail to be supportive of the house of David, then the predictable consequences will be the conquest by your neighbors, the destruction of your land and property. And this is God reclaiming God's haram, God's holy war rights of devoted things, of offerings to God because you failed to uphold your religious obligations in there. This is the polemical bent of Joshua, but remember, just like Hamilton, Josiah can't just make up whatever he wants. He has to work within the common understanding of who Joshua was and what Israel's history was, and has to get people to agree that his presentation is a good presentation of the story. As such, there are certain inconvenient historical facts that he has to deal with that are still there in Joshua that allow us to construct alternative readings of the text that go against this polemical reading because they were, historical facts and historical realities that they were having to deal with. The end of the book of Joshua has the passage which is possibly the only part that you might know by sound and name. It's possibly the only part that is quoted. Some people put it on plaques in their homes. In Joshua 24, starting in the 14th verse, Joshua has gathered all the tribes together and saying to them that they've kind of come to a place where Joshua's too old to continue the conquest. The conquest isn't complete because the people of Israel kept failing to be completely faithful to the commands that are there. But Joshua is presenting them with this choice. He's saying, now therefore revere the Lord and serve him in sincerity and faithfulness. Put away the gods that your ancestors served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. Now, if you're unwilling to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve. This is perhaps the part you've heard. Choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your ancestors served in the region beyond the river of the gods, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. And oftentimes it's quoted selectively, literally just, choose this day whom you will serve, but as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. This is Josiah, or the house of David, putting their words in the mouth of Joshua, saying to the people of Israel, pick who you're going to serve. Who will you follow? You can follow your neighbors, Assyria and Babylon, the Amorites, the Canaanites. You can follow all of them. You can follow Jeroboam implicitly, who we also is arguing is a idolater and a failure there. Or you can serve me and Yahweh, but we, the house of David, are going to serve the Lord, is the sort of concluding statement. It's like the lawyer at the end of the case, to the jury. This is my concluding argument, right here. Who will you follow? That's what is being put out to the people of Israel. Who will you follow? He's tried to make his argument for why you should follow him. He'll lead you to safety and security. He's going to get Yahweh on your side, is there. And also given the stick side of the carrot and stick, the carrot is God will protect us. The threat is you don't follow me and you're going to be an enemy of God as part of that. And he's made this argument and he's concluding his argument. But he has to acknowledge some factors that are a little inconvenient, such as if we flip back toward the beginning of Joshua in chapter 2, the first verse of chapter 2. Let's see. All right, this is another chunk that might be something that you've heard before, possibly if you've read any of Joshua. Can I have a volunteer to read starting in, Danny, that'd be great. You start in verse 1 and let's read to about 14.
Chapter 2.
Yes, chapter 2.
Then Joshua son of Nun secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab, bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly, you may catch up with them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan. And as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given this land to you, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts sank, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. Keep going?
Keep going, one more.
Our lives for your lives, the men assured her. If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. So she then let them down.
That's good right there.
Perfect.
Yep. Okay. So, an opportunity for another person to play spoiler here. Does anyone know who Rahab is? It's okay if you don't. That's fine. So that gives just me an opportunity to have fun here. So then let's go to the Gospel according to Matthew in the New Testament. The very beginning of the Gospel, the first chapter, first verse. And I just need someone to read the first 6 verses of Matthew. Yep, the first 6 verses. Go for it, Carol.
A record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron was the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Amminadab. Amminadab was the father of Nahshon. Nahshon was the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab.
Can you continue
Okay.
a little bit more?
Boaz was the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David.
There we go.
That was David's grandmother.
Rahab was David's grandmother. So, the house of David has a problem.
She's not adopted. I didn't realize she was a prostitute.
Rahab is a non-Israelite. She is a Canaanite. She is a woman of low station and status. The word prostitute is contested. She's a woman of some disreputable profession. Could be prostitute, but she could be also like a temple functionary or something. She's doing something anyway that would be deemed scandalous for a woman to be doing. Ill repute, and is there. And she's David's grandma. Now Josiah wants to say, here we are, we're the purest, most perfect leaders that you could ask for, anointed by God. We don't have any of this problems. You know, we're not idolaters. We're not intermarrying with the Canaanites and things, except for my grandma. Forget my grandma. Worship in temple. We don't even do genealogy ordinarily via the women in the tradition. We normally do it by men, but Rahab is so culturally important and significant, so widely known, that we're not even able, like if they could have hidden and denied her, they would have hidden and denied her. So the fact is she must be well known. She must be famous enough that you can't pretend not to be related to her. They can't hide this fact about themselves. So because she's famous and well known and popular, not only does the house of David have this own problem in their past, but Josiah has a political problem. He's arguing for a political position of purity and resistance to all outsiders and all Canaanites and things like that, while knowing that he has this own problem inside. So he not only has to explain how there can be Israelites who are faithless and therefore we fight against them, we turn Haram against them. He also has to explain how there can be non-Israelites who are faithful, who are righteous. There have to be exceptions to the rule about outsiders, otherwise his whole argument falls apart. So Joshua contains multiple examples. Rahab is the most famous, but it contains multiple examples of these so-called righteous outsiders. Righteous outsiders, people who are portrayed in the gospel. You saw there, Rahab tells them, I know that your God is powerful and more powerful than our God, and we're there. So Josiah's temple's words, putting them in Rahab's mouth. Rahab, even though he can't deny, she's a Canaanite, she's a prostitute, she's an outsider, all of those things are true, but he's got to make her as righteous as possible to fit in with the version of the story. He has to make an argument for why is she the exception? Why is she spared? Because obviously she is spared, not only because that's what the story that's known, but also she lived long enough to marry, Boaz, or not Boaz, father of Boaz by Rahab, Salmon. She marries Salmon. So she lived long enough to marry Salmon to have Boaz, who is going down there. She has to have survived this, which means that Joshua's campaign of eradicating people obviously made exceptions. lots of exceptions. What are the possibilities of these exceptions? And these exceptions become a repeated theme in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Bible, of the prophets pointing to the fact that God, many, many times, has chosen to protect, favor, save, deliver non-members of the tribes of Abraham, and chosen to punish members of the tribes of Abraham, and that this conflicts with the ethno-nationalist narrative that Yahweh is our God only, and we're the best because our God's better than all y'all gods. This conflicts with that narrative, instead creates a picture of Yahweh who is a God of all the nations, and creates a dynamic where there's always critics of the temple, always critics of the house of David, who can say, remember when God saved Rahab? Remember when God sent Jonah to the Ninevites? Nineveh, by the way, is the capital of Assyria. So when we, and we're not doing Jonah today, so I'm not going to ask you to remember all the details of Jonah, but just remember that he's a prophet of Israel, of Yahweh, sent to Assyria to tell the Assyrians that God wants them to repent and they'll be saved. And the ending of the story is they do. Assyria repents and God protects them. So the entire story of the prophet Jonah is the story of a prophet of Israel going to another non-Israelite nation and telling them God wants you to be righteous and God will protect you if you are righteous. Which is very problematic if you're the house of David or you're the temple priests of the temple and you're trying to get everyone to believe that they have to come worship in Jerusalem or they're doomed. Because they can just go, what about the Ninevites? I mean, God seems cool with them. You know, what about your great-grandma? I mean, your great-great-grandma. What about that? So the narrative is complicated. It's complicated by these historical realities that the house of David couldn't deny, which make this question not quite so black and white. Because there apparently are choices besides follow me or be burned to ash as a sacrifice to God. There apparently are choices that are there. However much the temple would like you to believe that there aren't, there apparently are. So, let's talk about one more figure today, which will help us understand why Joshua, the text, is still relevant to our lives and understanding, if for no other reason than providing an interesting contrast to help us understand what our religion is about. The Aramaic name Yeshua is the same as the Hebrew name Joshua. They're just the same. They're the two translation versions of them. The Aramaic name Yeshua is the source of the Latin name Jesus, which in English is Jesus. Jesus and Joshua have the same name and, not accidentally, are portrayed in very similar ways. The fundamental question Jesus poses to his disciples is, who will you follow? And then portrays an image of what a righteous leader looks like, and what it would mean to be righteous, and what it would mean to be a follower of that righteous leader. A lot of points about the narrative are similar. There's a reason I went to the Gospel of Matthew for the genealogy. I could have gone to Ruth or another book in the Old Testament to grab the genealogy, but it's the point to knowledge. Jesus has the same genealogy as Josiah. Jesus has the same problem in his genealogy as Josiah. He has both Rahab and Ruth. He has multiple non-Israelite ancestors, women of arguably poor reputation, who are part of his ancestry and undermine his credibility as a pure representative of Davidic or Israelite leadership. Jesus is portrayed doing some of the same things that Joshua argues for doing, which is to say, he goes on a campaign of religious purification of the people of Israel. The story of Jesus going to the temple and overturning the tables of the money changers and things is a story of Jesus going into the temple and saying, this temple is not being faithful or pure or righteous in its worship of Yahweh. It is failing in its there. This is a form of idolatry. It's idolatrous to have these coins with the face of Caesar and the process of economic indebtedment and enslavement that's happening here in the temple to be happening in a place that's meant to be a house for prayer. He does what Joshua claimed he would do to purify the worship of Israel, but specifically and interestingly, whereas Joshua allies with the temple against everybody else's worship, Jesus directs his criticism of the impurity of worship at the temple institution. So Joshua is like, the temple is the perfect way to worship, and only the temple, and we are going to go and get rid of everyone else's way of worshiping. And Jesus comes and says, I agree that our worship is impure, and the way it's impure is how it's manifested in the temple. And he goes and he cleanses the temple from doing there. Furthermore, the basic, final method of accomplishing their aims, Joshua accomplishes his aims through holy war, through ultra-violence, right? Through dedicating every enemy, every man, woman, child, and every bit of tribute and property to destruction, to haram, to sacrifice for God. That's his method of accomplishing his political aims. And one of the things that Joshua does, we heard it in the one passage we read about the city of Ai at the end, he puts kings on trees. At one point, he does 31 kings on trees. He puts kings on trees. He hangs them by trees to symbolize his victorious power over the other people and their dedication to God. Well, it's probably being too obvious about it to point out that there's a very important part of the gospel that involves a figure called a king being put on a tree.
Oh, yeah.
And importantly, it's not somebody else's king. It's not Caesar. It's not Assyria. It's not Babylon. It's not Persia. It's not the Canaanites. It's the king of the who? The king of the Jews. It's Jesus. It's God. It's the figure in there that is there. The argument here is that the path to holiness, the path to righteousness, the path to purity doesn't go through destruction of your enemies. It goes through a willingness for God to take on to God's self the necessity of the if we have to have a sacrifice to purify, God says, fine, it'll be me. If it has to be, if you have to have a sacrifice, then fine. This will be the sacrifice that will happen. It inverts the narrative of Joshua. It takes the story of Joshua and says, not quite. Other way around. You got the idea, yes, follow me, I will be your God, I will be your protector there, but you turned it into this nightmare politics of violence and exclusion and hatred. So it's all about don't mix, don't intermarry with your neighbors because that will lead you to idolatry. And Jesus is accused famously of what? And by the Pharisees and stuff. What is he accused of in his ministry all the time? Blasphemy, but in this case, in relation to the, intermixing, like he spends time in the company of the wrong people, right?
Yeah.
He associates with tax collectors and sinners and outsiders and impure people and non-Jewish and non-Israelite people. Is there? He takes this thing and flips it on its head Furthermore, there's one more, well, there's a lot more, but there's a couple, there's a really important and interesting piece to this narrative is that we understand this political split here between these two nations. Here, the capital of this northern place is Samaria. Samaria, the city, which was still around in Jesus' day, was still there, is also the origin of the name, the term, for the group of people who were living there in Jesus' time. The Samaritans. The Samaritans were understood by the Judeans, by the people of Israel and by the people of Judah, the southern, as apostates. They'd fallen away from the true and faithful worship of Yahweh. They were our cousins, closely related to us, but no longer in the fold. They'd fallen out away from the thing because in this region, you didn't have to go to the temple in Jerusalem for your feast days and your festivals necessarily. You could just do it at home, or go to Bethel, or go to Dan. Maybe some of them might have even still had like an Asherah pole in the backyard. That was common, and so the Samaritans were viewed by the people of Judah as like idolaters and sinners and people who should know better, worse than people from Assyria or Greece or Rome or something, because they know better. They speak the same language as us, and they read the scriptures, they read the Torah. They should know better. They've got the book of Joshua in there, the same we've got the book of Joshua in there, and it's pretty clear about what God thinks about people who don't worship exactly the way God wants them to. How could they still be worshiping in this way that is, so unfaithful by Judean understandings and interpretations? So when Jesus is like, at the beginning of the thing, they're like, could anything good come from Galilee? Out of Galilee? That's what they're referring to. They're like, this part of the country is full of people who aren't faithful by Judean perspective and understanding. They are the Samaritans. And so Jesus has asked a question about what it means to be a good neighbor, what it means to be righteous. How do you be righteous? And he gives an example of what a righteous person looks like. And what example does he give? Yeah, so much so that nowadays we don't even think, when we think Samaritan, we think good. They don't think good, right? They think Samaritan, they think, blasphemer. They think heretic. They think, liar, outsider. The putting the good on there is Jesus' innovation, which we now take for granted. But on there, the good Samaritan is his example of what it looks like to be righteous here, as what's there. And he goes to the temple and says, the temple is failing, the temple is impure, and that not only that, but God, this temple, he predicts its destruction. He predicts the temple is going to be torn down, not a stone left on stone. The temple institution itself is not how it's going to work. God's worship is going to happen in a new way. It's going to happen in the community, and it's going to happen outside among people, God's Spirit moving freely about. It's the Levitical priest's nightmare, right? You don't need a priest to intervene for you if God can talk to anywhere 2 or 3 people are gathered. 2 or 3? That's so few people. Surely you need at least like 100 people together for God to speak, and one of those people should be a divinely authorized Levitical priest. Is there? That's absurd. Jesus' whole program of worship and whole program of community building is a very powerful challenge to the model. And he does it while claiming to be a descendant of the house of David, to be Josiah's great-great-great-great-grandson, and to share the same name as the one who Josiah used as his example for how you're supposed to be doing it, for how you're supposed to be a righteous leader. Do you get now why the temple priests needed to have him killed? Do you get why the priesthood in Jerusalem was like, this guy cannot we can't let him do this. You see what he's doing? It's so big of a threat to the established religious perspective of his period and time. It's not just that he's, a little bit uncouth. It's not just that he's, going around saying some slightly embarrassing things. It's that his way of portraying how God lives and operates and how God operates through the people, his way of offering them a choice of how to follow God, is going to ultimately make the temple irrelevant. And that's what the people in Jesus' time would have heard and understood when Jesus was going around telling these stories and acting on these things. They would have all been very familiar with Joshua. They would have all been very familiar with the story of Josiah and the role of the temple in their lives. They would have all understood these dynamics, and they would have seen not just that Jesus was, drawing attention for himself or a good speaker or could heal some people with some lovely miracle, but they would have heard that his very way of being and acting was a threat to the religious and political establishment that was then in power. All right, you've listened to me talk nonstop for some time, and we're coming to the end of our time together anyhow. So I'd like to use our last, 5 to 10 minutes to just open it up for any questions, any reactions, anything. How does this reading of Joshua impact you? We'll start here and then we'll go down. Yeah.
What brings to my mind is, as a parent, when you have a child, my daughter, when she was about 4 or 5 years old, too many choices. So we would tell her, well, you can wear this outfit or you can wear this outfit. So we deluded her into thinking she had a choice. It wasn't her choice. It was still our choice. I feel the same way about this. The Holy War, or the crucified Jesus, or there are two choices that don't apply or even work anymore today, because our concept of God can't be a human concept anymore. It can't be a patriarchal projection of some guy in the sky who's going to kill this person or that person and punish us and punish them because you don't believe properly. That sounds more like a politician or Donald Trump or something. The God that we're dealing with today is, and I don't even like the word God, but is we are in our delusion of making these two choices, we're destroying the very thing that was created for us to live in. So something else has to come out now. Something, as far as I'm concerned, something other than anything that humans in the form of religion have created anywhere on the planet. And it seems to be the dying, the swan dive or the last breath of all of these philosophies that we humans have created and projected, mostly by men, on our planet. And so I don't have an answer. I don't even know what the third choice is, other than something's got to give, and it's giving right now. And none of these philosophies are going to save us. Israel, the people who create Gaza and Israel and so on are not capable of solving the problem because they created it in the first place. So how do we do that? We have to all be together, all realize that everything we do, we're all so interconnected that, none of the things we've created in the past are going to work.
Yeah.
So,
I had a slightly less ambitious agenda this morning than trying to come up with an entirely new religious understanding of the world. I was hoping to just help us understand these texts a little better. But I resonate with your feelings about how these stories, being told can feel like dead ends to us. That's there. What can I say? I made a profession, a vocation of trying to understand these texts and trying to understand our faith, because I think that we can't figure out where to go without understanding where we've been.
And the essence of your story, to me, has really been profound, that either way it doesn't work. We are playing and living the same story that you're telling us happened so many years ago, and I understand that.
Yeah.
And it resonates with me, and it breaks my heart. And I appreciate that.
Mhm.
So I think that is the thing we need to find out, right? We need to accept the fact that the story doesn't work for humanity or the planet.
Yeah. Danny, I saw your hand earlier. Request your thought or reaction of any kind?
It's gone
Okay, sorry. Yeah, Diane?
So, I mean, this is the thing that's striking me right now is there is this quote-unquote king that I've never heard of before, Josiah. And look at the ramifications of this person, you know, all the way down to present day. I mean, to me, that's just kind of jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
You know, that him and his followers and his writers, that's why I asked about who wrote it.
Yeah.
Because we're living, you know, and so many people are like, if it's in the Bible, you gotta do it, da, 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 da.
Yeah,
Because of Josiah, we're living as a result of some of what
absolutely.
he, and you know, supposedly the books are written by the conquerors.
Uh-huh.
So obviously, you know, he was successful, but.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had a similar reaction when I first started seeing these connections and studying them in seminary and after seminary, and is just how impactful they have been through history. I know we don't have time today. I left lots of hints, and I'm sure you can perceive ways that you can see these politics still relevant, and not just in the immediate moment, but throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. You know, Joshua was the explicit basis for the doctrine of manifest destiny in the United States, for example, and the idea that you know, we had a right to spread and conquer our pagan people and to purify and cleanse the land for a holy vision of how that land should be. It also, of course, was the explicit basis of the Nazi final solution program of trying to say that, you know, we're going to reach back and resurrect our glory period. We're gonna, the Third Reich is the Third Reich because it's happened before, and we're reviving our past glory and doing so through a process of literal ethnic cleansing, purifying from our midst the entities we've deemed to be a threat to our national purity in how that is. So it's clear that this impacts our politics very, very, very much, and so I think that it's you know, not that studying the texts lead you immediately to a solution, but at least studying the texts helps you see that these problems are not disconnected. We are repeating narratives that you know, we can learn from. Questions, reactions? We have a bit of time for maybe one more.
It all started in 641 BC. What hope is there for the rest of us?
Well, I hope that, if nothing else, I persuaded you that spending some time studying texts that we maybe don't pay that much attention to very much can still be profitable, that we can still that we can still learn from them, we can still find interest there, and that we are not bound to interpret them the same way their writers, creators, or original communities intended for them to be interpreted. That even within the texts, they contain the possibility for reinterpretation and reimagination. Josiah could not hide his great-grandma, could not hide Rahab, could not hide the righteous outsiders, could not hide the fact that God does not work exclusively through the temple and through Israel and exclusively through a process of ultra-violent holy war. Despite his agenda, that came through in the text, and many, many prophets that followed him criticized that agenda explicitly. Read Amos. It's full of calling out the house of David and the temple for failing to care for the poor and the orphan and the outsider, and saying that God is with the outsider more than the insider. There's a reason. Jesus didn't invent his ideas. He got them from the prophets before him and took them and expanded upon them. And so part of the interest in reading them is to go, we can use these texts still, but we have to use them in new ways. We have to interpret anew, afresh. One last one, yeah?
Romans 12:2. Ye shall transformed by the renewing of your mind.
By the renewing of your mind. Oh, what a lovely conclusion. I'm happy to stay and talk with anyone who wants to, but we are a little over our time, and I want to respect people's time because I want people to come back and do this again when we do it. We're going to talk about Mark next time. We're going to alternate Old and New Testament. We're also going to alternate locations. So the next time we'll be at Sherwood. You'll have lots of notice. It'll be in the newsletters and the bulletins and everything like that. I encourage you to come. You're also encouraged to bring other people, friends. Now that you've got a little bit of an idea of kind of what we'll be doing, maybe you can share why it might be worth their time. And thank you so much for your time this morning. It's a privilege, really, I mean that, for you to give me like 3 whole hours of your Saturday when you could have been just having fun away elsewhere to spend here with me. I'm really grateful for it, so thank you very much.